21.5 million records, 5.6 million fingerprints, nearly 20 years of personal information. Those are not casualty figures from a battlefield, they are the grim tally of a single, devastating cyberattack. When we discuss cyber warfare, we often focus exclusively on the financial toll. We talk about millions of dollars drained, stock markets manipulated, or corporate secrets stolen for monetary gain. Those figures are often astronomical, designed to shock and to terrify. But there exists a far darker currency in the digital underworld. A currency worth more than Bitcoin, more than gold, and more than any corporate bank vault. That currency is identity. Not merely a name and an address, but the very essence of a person's life, their known vulnerabilities, their deepest, most intimate secrets. In the quiet, bureaucratic heart of the United States government, there existed a vault. Not a physical strongbox made of steel and concrete, but a massive digital archive, known as the Office of Personnel Management. This agency was the central nervous system for millions of Americans who had sworn an oath to serve their nation. And in the years leading up to 2014, the Office of Personnel Management held the most sensitive treasure imaginable: the security clearance files. Specifically, the notorious Form SF-86. What exactly is the SF-86? It is the closest thing to a soul stripped bare within a federal document. To hold one of the most powerful positions in the world, one must surrender everything. You are required to detail every single debt, every health issue, every foreign contact, every relationship that ever went sideways, and every painful secret you hope to keep buried forever. These are not trivial disclosures. These details become the threads of blackmail. They are the exact pressure points that a foreign adversary could exploit to turn a loyal civil servant into a double agent. It is a perfect, meticulously crafted, deadly dossier. Now, imagine that one day, without any warning, the entire vault vanishes. It was not merely picked clean, it was copied. Every single secret, every potential vulnerability, every piece of intimate, deep personal data on 21.5 million Americans, all of it, was gone. This is the story of the Office of Personnel Management hack. It stands as the most brazen act of intelligence theft in the history of the United States. This attack was not about stealing money. It was about stealing the American soul. The stage had been set. The treasure, millions of highly sensitive records, was stored, organized, and tragically vulnerable. Now, we must turn our attention to the architects of this digital heist, and the almost unbelievable simplicity of their initial entry. This was not a spectacular smash and grab, it was a patient, methodical campaign of infiltration. The beginning of the end for the Office of Personnel Management started quietly, possibly as far back as 2014. The attack did not launch with sophisticated zero-day exploits or complex code injections targeting the Pentagon. It began with the oldest trick in the book: phishing. The perpetrators, who United States intelligence agencies would later attribute to foreign, state-sponsored actors, understood a crucial truth. The easiest way into any system is through its weakest link, and the weakest link is almost always a person. It is believed that the hackers initially targeted a third-party contractor working with the Office of Personnel Management. Not even a direct employee. This contractor possessed access to the vast networks. A carefully crafted email, a deceptive link, perhaps a promise of an overdue payment or a sudden system update. It took only one single misstep, one single click on a malicious file, and the door was opened. The key to the kingdom had been handed over. What followed was perhaps the most frightening aspect of the entire breach: the silence. Once inside the perimeter, the attackers did not announce their presence. They did not immediately deploy widespread malware or trigger alarms. Instead, they settled in like a silent parasite. For months, perhaps 7 months, perhaps even longer, they lived quietly within the infrastructure of the United States government. Their work was surgical. They meticulously searched for ways to escalate their privileges, to move laterally from the contractor's entry point deeper into the core systems. They were looking for the master keys, the administrative credentials that would grant them access to the personnel databases. This phase, known as privilege escalation, required patience, expertise, and a chilling understanding of how American federal agencies operated. The goal was not quick destruction, the goal was complete and utter reconnaissance. They were studying the network's architecture, its defenses, and, most crucially, its points of failure. They were charting the best path to the 21.5 million human secrets stored in those SF-86 files. The silence was absolute. No alarms were blaring in the Security Operations Center. The hackers were cloaked, moving invisibly along the trusted pathways of the network. They were using legitimate tools and legitimate credentials, making them indistinguishable from actual, authorized employees. This level of operational security signaled a profound shift in the nature of the threat. This was an espionage operation executed with digital tools, operating at a pace designed to guarantee success. The most shocking realization during the post-mortem analysis was that the Office of Personnel Management itself was deeply ill-equipped to detect and prevent such an intrusion. Despite being the keeper of the nation's deepest secrets, the agency's internal security controls were woefully inadequate. There were reports of delayed patching of known security flaws, and a general underestimation of the sophisticated threats looming beyond their digital walls. It was through these structural failures that the attackers finally achieved their objective. They found the vulnerability, they gained the ultimate access, and they located the database. The open door was now completely unlatched. They were ready to steal everything. The discovery of the theft did not come from a vigilant security team at the Office of Personnel Management. It came from an external security firm, performing unrelated penetration testing. It took a third party, examining anomalies in network traffic, to finally notice the silent, invisible hemorrhage that had been draining the nation's lifeblood for nearly a year. The damage was already done. The realization hit the highest levels of the United States government like an incoming missile. The digital intrusion was not merely a data loss. It was a national security catastrophe. When investigators finally pieced together the fragments of the attacker's presence, they realized the true, horrifying extent of the theft. Over 21 million Americans had their lives exposed. But beyond the names and addresses, beyond the financial histories, the hackers secured something far more devastating, something utterly irreversible: 5.6 million sets of fingerprints. Consider the gravity of that number. A social security number can eventually be replaced. A credit card can be cancelled. But a fingerprint is permanent. It is the bedrock of biometric security, a unique physical identifier used not only to unlock phones, but to access military bases, nuclear facilities, and classified documents. Now, an adversary possessed 5.6 million of these unchangeable master keys. This was not identity theft in the traditional sense, this was the theft of future identity. The implications for long-term espionage and intelligence collection were staggering. Every single person who had submitted their prints from low-level clerks to highly placed covert operatives was compromised for life. The response was immediate and unprecedented. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Department of Homeland Security, and the National Security Agency were mobilized. This was no longer a simple police case. It was a declaration of cyber war, albeit a silent one. Investigators faced a monumental task. The attackers were experts at covering their tracks, employing sophisticated infrastructure designed to mislead any attempt at tracing them back to their source. But in the world of espionage, perfect secrecy is impossible. Every digital footprint, no matter how small, leaves a trace. The investigation began to focus on the unique methods of the intrusion, the type of malware used, the protocols employed for exfiltration, and the sheer patience required for the operation pointed toward only one conclusion: a state actor. The official conclusion reached by intelligence agencies was clear. United States officials publicly and privately attributed the attack to hackers working on behalf of the Chinese government, although Beijing consistently denied any involvement. As is standard in the shadowy world of state-sponsored hacking, the evidence was compelling. The motive was intelligence superiority. This breach provided the alleged perpetrators with a database of unparalleled strategic value. They now held the vulnerability profiles for the entire apparatus of the United States federal workforce. They knew which officials had crippling debt, which had relatives living abroad, and which were suffering from treatable, but private, medical conditions. This was the weaponization of personal data. The human cost was immediate. Government employees, particularly those holding top-secret clearances, were forced to live in a state of permanent anxiety. They received letters warning them that their most intimate history, the data they had trusted their own government to protect, was now in the hands of a foreign power. The fear was palpable. Could they be blackmailed? Could their foreign contacts, detailed honestly on their SF-86 forms, now be used as leverage against them? The trust between the government and its personnel had been irrevocably shattered. The scale and scope of the Office of Personnel Management hack forced a reckoning within the capital. It was a clear, unambiguous signal that the United States government was fundamentally unprepared for the new era of espionage. The threat had moved beyond military hardware. The battlefield was now the human record. The investigation, although confirming the culprits in the eyes of the intelligence community, did not lead to arrests. State-sponsored hackers operate under the blanket of sovereign immunity. Yet, the work of the Federal Bureau of Investigation and other agencies was crucial in identifying the methodology, closing the doors, and preparing the nation for the inevitable, ongoing conflict in the digital shadows. The war had been lost, but the lesson, though painfully earned, was about to begin. The battle was over, the silence returned, but the wound remained deep and festering. The theft of 21.5 million personal histories left a legacy, far more insidious than a temporary setback. It initiated a permanent, chilling sense of vulnerability across the entire federal apparatus. The immediate aftermath was defined by damage control and finger pointing. The director of the Office of Personnel Management resigned. The agency itself was eventually dismantled, and its core functions transferred to the Department of Defense, a clear admission that the security failure was too profound to be fixed internally. The custodian of the nation's personnel secrets had become the greatest risk to its personnel. For the victims, the response was meager comfort. The government offered credit monitoring services, a gesture that rang hollow against the catastrophic loss of biometric data. How does one monitor the theft of one's own fingerprints? How does one secure a life that has been completely mapped out for an adversary? The reality was that for millions of dedicated public servants, the compromise was absolute and lasting. The threat of espionage and identity weaponization would follow them for the rest of their careers and their lives. But the most critical outcome of the Office of Personnel Management hack was the forced, painful illumination of the single, most important truth in modern security: the human element is the ultimate firewall and the ultimate vulnerability. Recall the simplicity of the initial entry: a phishing email, a contractor, a single click. A hostile foreign power did not need to spend billions developing a secret weapon to breach the United States government. They exploited complacency. They leveraged the reality that complex, multi-million-dollar defense systems can be instantly bypassed if one employee, stressed or distracted, makes one mistake on one single Tuesday morning. This revelation has rewritten the rules of engagement for the digital age. The lesson learned, etched in the stolen data of 21.5 million people, is this: organizations must move beyond the perimeter defense and embrace the concept of zero trust. Crucially, every single system and every single user must be continually verified. The single most effective defense against the methodology used in this attack is something that should have been standard decades ago: multi-factor authentication. Had the initial contractor's account been protected by a second layer of verification, a text message code, a physical token, the entire sequence of catastrophic events, the months of silent espionage, the theft of the fingerprints, all of it might have been stopped at the gate. This truth is the final, agonizing twist of the knife in the story of the Office of Personnel Management hack. The breach was not inevitable. It was preventable, stopped by a simple, necessary step that was overlooked until the unimaginable had become reality. The silence is gone. The 21st century has settled upon us, heavy and cold. The war is no longer fought over land or resources, but over the data streams that define our very existence. The story of the Office of Personnel Management is not merely a historical footnote of a colossal government blunder. It is a chilling prophecy. It serves as a permanent warning that in the age of digital secrets, our most private details are now a weapon, and the only path to survival is eternal, uncompromising vigilance. If you wish to remain vigilant, if you need the knowledge to survive the next breach, subscribe to Secret Files. Do not wait for the warning, be the warning.